Their society was a nation of unlawful retribution. Most crimes, such as robbery or battery, were deemed punishable by capital punishment. The norm for trials became by judge and officials versus a jury of peers. Those mandates had terrified society into submission. Technically, there were still 50 states. A vast majority of their land worldwide was just not inhabited, a wasteland. The regime focused on getting states which suffered the least amount of destruction back in order. Las Vegas was the capital of the United Origins. Washington, D.C. had been demolished. The world dictator, Lutheran Eminence, determined all decisions. He did have a legislative board, but they backed him 100%. Under Lutherans' lead were ambassadors, one for each of the remaining continents, followed by governors. The governor's jurisdiction didn't just govern one state, though. It reigned over 2 or more. The war caused the loss of over 40% of the population. The vastest difference was that there were no longer 7 continents. Only 3 remained. World War III caused more devastation than all prior wars put together. The death toll was unprecedented. Cade. Finally, her eyes fluttered open. Relief filled Cade because she'd been out of it for a while. He still couldn't believe he'd gone to a party, and it got raved. He wasn't surprised the shindig had gotten busted. In the New World Order, all parties were illegal. Painting the town red was not Cade's usual scene. He had only snuck into less than a handful of parties over the years. Cade didn't regret going, or he wouldn't have met the gorgeous girl in front of him. But he hated they'd gotten caught. When the enforcers kicked the door in, the girl Cade had been crushing on wasn't going to make it. In his effort to rescue her, he'd gotten tasered and thrown in the slammer too. Now they were up Schitt's Creek. "Phew, you're awake. I was beginning to worry," Cade told the woman. Slowly, she faced Cade. Her uniquely colored eyes dilated. He was sitting close to her while she lay passed out on the bench. Being tasered twice was the reason she was out cold for so long. Her long, wavy black hair was tousled, but it was an attractive look on her. The woman closed her eyes for a spell. Maybe she was trying to figure out where she was. Suddenly, she bolted upright. Tugging at their confined wrists, she hissed. "Whoa, careful, we're connected," Cade informed her. The woman's eyes widened as she glanced down. Cade repositioned himself more comfortably. There was only so much give and take with them being handcuffed together. He had high hopes that the opposition, the co-op that he was a member of, would come through. But it would probably take them a while to come up with a game plan. Why are we handcuffed?" the lady asked with creases lining her forehead. Cade laughed without humor. "The enforcer that I was wrestling with in an attempt to rescue you thought it was fitting." "Huh?" "A prank on his part," he made the comment. "Since you want to be a hero, then I'll arrange for you to stay together. Permanently," Cade explained. "What an asshole," she exclaimed. "How long have I been passed out?" "Not sure. More than an hour. I would have liked to get my hands on the punk that tasered you. The second voltage was not necessary. It's why you were out for so long." The lady shivered. Then she raked a hand through her thick black waves. "Don't worry. You look great." Her eyes reached the heavens. Being in close proximity, it was high time he formally introduced himself. "I'm Kincaid, by the way, but everyone just calls me Cade." "My name is Callie." "Nice to meet you." "You too, Cade." She flinched. "My mom is going to kill me." "Don't worry. My crew will intervene." "What do you mean?" Cade scooted closer. "The organization I'm with should be here shortly. We all have locators." Her brow knitted. "So, you get into this kind of trouble often?" He chuckled. She was adorable. "Nah, this is my first offense. But this co-op has its perks." Cade shouldn't be telling her this, but he decided to just go with it. Several members had been captured. He seriously doubted the op would hang them out to dry, so Callie was bound to find out anyway. After checking to make sure the prick officer wasn't nearby, he whispered, The locator signal will not only let them know where I am, but I'll be able to hear them. How? Even lower, he replied. The technology we have is advanced. The device is located by my eardrum. They can use it to transmit my location, and it allows me to hear radio communication. I can also talk to them once the wave signal is activated. She arched her eyebrows. Okay. Even if you guys break us out, it doesn't really alleviate the problem. We're in the system. They'll confiscate us, then we'll be in more trouble than we already are. My crew will crash their system with a virus that will destroy all camera footage recorded within the last few days. The good thing is, they threw us straight in here. They haven't even processed this cell block yet, which makes things easier. So, they haven't fingerprinted anyone in this section? Cade shook his head. Plus, the virus will wipe out their files too. Any inmate in this compound who manages to flee, it will be their lucky day. This sounds like cryptic op stuff. Why are you telling me this? He shrugged. I have good instincts. I seriously doubt you're going to blab to the guards. No, I'm not a tattletale. Cade's lips curved forward, and Callie grinned also. Has your corporation communicated with you? Not yet. Her smile flipped upside down, and he wanted to reassure her. In a situation like this, they have to rescue us. It's code. There are too many members from our organization here. Tobias is the best IT hacker in the city of San Diego. He built the virus crasher. Tobias and I are good bros. He'll come through. He's the guy that was dancing with your friend. So they made it out? As far as I know, they were headed out the back way when I returned for you. She sighed. Thank you for trying to rescue me. Cade hadn't known Callie long, but from the moment he had seen her dance, there was something between them. There was no way that he wouldn't have attempted to help her. You're welcome, he replied. What about these cuffs? Let's get out of here first, then we'll worry about that. I'm going to stand up. At least the chain between their metal cuffs was longer than regular handcuffs, which allowed for some movement. Callie stood, walking over to the bars. Cade had no choice but to follow her. This place is packed, she said. Cade spotted Raffi nearby. Raphael, a member of my crew, is 2 cells down. Static, Raffi relayed to him. Code could hear the low buzz in his ear canal, too. A welcomed relief. Does Raphael have a locator also? Yes, every member does. Is static a code word? It means the communication signal is being activated. I can hear it now. So what is supposed to happen exactly? Spotting the lawman, Cade inclined his head toward him, giving Callie a heads up. She turned away quickly. That's the prick who handcuffed us. Once the enforcer made his rounds, he spoke in a low voice. I'll explain later. We probably shouldn't talk in detail. I'll let you know more as soon as I have a clear signal. Earlier, Cade was skeptical if the op would come through. Now that the communication signal had turned on, he could relax a little. He was certain a rescue mission was en route. Wanting to learn more about Callie, Cade said, I haven't seen you at any local scenes. That was my first and my last party. Look what happened when I finally broke down and went. Callie's entire body was tense. Cade wanted to erase her worries. Well, I'm glad you came. I couldn't have gotten a better cellmate. Callie's lips spread across her face. Do you joke about everything? Just trying to lighten the mood. You seem terrified. Aren't you? One violation makes your life a living hell. I won't be allowed to attend school this fall semester. My compadres will get us out of this. Cade was enjoying their conversation. Jail wasn't the most romantic place to flirt, but being so close to her sprang his body to life. Cade had never been this attracted to anyone before. Callie was an extremely beautiful woman, and he couldn't help ogling her. Callie looked down. What's up? Cade couldn't quite pinpoint the color of her eyes. Your eye color is very unique. Her cheeks flushed. I'm not sure of the color. I inherited them from my father. My driver's license says they're amber. The shade is not just gold. Brown and red are swirled within the amber, like a copper penny. They're gorgeous. She blushed more. Callie was shyer than he was. Maybe he needed to zip it. He didn't want to make her uncomfortable. Thank you. I like the color of your eyes also. Much appreciated, he responded, now feeling like his cheeks were on fire. Cade's eyes were the color of platinum. He got complimented about them often, but Callie's compliment caused his stomach to turn a backflip. Have you had an update from your team? No, not yet. It shouldn't be much longer. Callie frowned. To keep her mind from wandering to the worst, Cade continued to make idle chit-chat. It had been a while since the locator's line was open for communication. Doubt that the buzzing from the locator device had been a fluke was starting to set in. Maybe the opposition wouldn't come to the rescue, wanting to teach them a lesson. Cade pushed his worry to the rear of his mind. He must remain positive that the op would come through, or they'd be in a world of trouble. A while later, the sound of their cells' locks clicking was music to Cade's ears. The cavalry had arrived. Realizing that the door's opening meant freedom, everyone began to scatter. Cade rushed Callie out of their cell. Raffi was closer to the enforcer standing guard. He pounced on him, swiping the enforcer's legs from underneath him. Cade kicked the lawman in the face next, knocking him out cold. Raffi retrieved his gun off the ground. Glancing at his wrist, Cade needed to deal with another problem. They had to get the chain from the cuff broken so they could run better. Raffi, can you take care of this? Asked Cade, raising their joined handcuff chain. Raffi aimed the gun at them. Cade scooted to the side, putting as much space between them as possible, extending the chain. Callie nibbled on her bottom lip. Wait, I don't think this is a good idea. Raphael is a good shot. Just turn your head to the side. We don't have much time, and it will be easier to run not being joined at the wrists. Here goes, Raffi warned them. Don't move! Callie closed her eyes. A good marksman, Raffi hit the chain dead on. Now their hands were free. The compound's lights went out, and the inmates that were not part of the opposition whimpered and gasped. They didn't have a clue what was going on. Mike, an op member, ran past them, heading for the far wall. He wore a black mask covering his entire face, except his eyes. He looked like he was robbing the joint. Moments passed, and then the backup lights came on. The lighting was dim, but Cade could see better. Mike placed 3 blocks onto the far wall so he could blow it out. Knowing what was to occur, Cade pushed Callie against the wall, shielding her body with his. Everyone stand clear! Mike shouted. A loud explosion detonated from the bombs on the wall. Chunks of debris splayed everywhere. Inmates screamed, and some of them dove to the floor. Mike didn't waste time. After the wall was blown, he sprinted through it. Gunshots, accompanied by yelling, came from the main building where Cade's other team members were. Another member burst quickly through the metal door from the compound. Move out! Cade recognized Randolph's voice. He was geared in all black, too. Raffi and a ton more people didn't hesitate escaping. The gaping, jagged hole from the explosion had smoke spewing from it. Cade pulled Callie in the direction of the opening. Some inmates stood frozen in place, or stayed on the ground, shell-shocked. Get your asses out of there! Tobias shouted through the locator. I'll guide you through the team's cameras. Come on, everyone! Cade encouraged the crowd. He didn't wait for their response, hauling ass out of the smoking hole. Hopefully the other inmates made a run for it. This was their chance. They had nothing to lose. The only crime they'd supposedly committed was having fun at a party. Run straight for now! You'll make a right soon, Tobias relayed. The getaway vehicles are 3 miles due west. Eric spoke up through their devices. The area was infiltrated by darkness. The towering pole lighting didn't provide much light. Callie's eyes were like a deer in headlights, but she was a fast runner and kept pace with Cade. There are escape vehicles waiting. We have to make it through this valley first, Cade told Callie. Okay, she replied in a shaky voice. You trust me? Yes, Callie said with certainty. Cade held her hand in a death grip as they sprinted toward the valley ahead. Uneven, knee-high grass layered the terrain. In the dim light, it was difficult to make out their surroundings. Glancing over his shoulder, Cade saw other members of the opposition, along with a slew of inmates. "It's a straight shot from where you guys are now," Tobias told them. "Push it!" "We're almost there," Cade relayed to Callie. Cade should have known this wouldn't be easy. All hell broke loose as gunfire erupted. A dude to his side tumbled over, getting shot in his back. Enforcement was on their trail. More blasts sounded from their pursuers. Cade pulled them behind a large tree, and they crouched down. As Cade's eyes tried to focus in the darkness, he scanned the perimeter. Firing came from every direction. Maybe some of Cade's crew was retaliating. He wished he could help. Inmates scurried in an attempt to escape from the bullets. In the distance, Cade spotted an enforcer lurking in the tall weeds. He aimed his gun, hitting someone. The law had no mercy. They could taser them, but instead they chose to gun them down. Turning toward Callie, Cade pointed in the distance. "Stay here," he whispered. "I'm going to take him out." She grabbed his arm. "Let's just make a run for it." "No, this area is open. There's too much of a risk of him shooting one of us." He double-checked his surroundings. "If this doesn't go as planned, I want you to run to the pickup point. We're only about a mile out from the rescue vehicles." "But—" "No buts. Just keep straight and stay low." "Be careful." He nodded, then crept toward the lawman. Gunshots were now few and far between. Sneaking up behind him, Cade kicked the weapon from his hand. The enforcer tackled him, and they fumbled to the ground. Getting the upper hand, the enforcer climbed on top of Cade. He retaliated, kicking him in the groin. Cade tried to grab the pistol he'd seen, only the enforcer was faster. He retrieved the gun before Cade could, aiming it point blank. "On your feet, now!" the enforcer commanded. Cade sighed, rising to his feet. "Don't you dare move, or I swear I'll blast your ass! Turn around and place your hands behind your head." Slowly, Cade did as he was told. A moment later, he heard a grunt, followed by a thud. Whipping around, he saw the enforcer on the ground, knocked out. Callie stood with a rock in her possession. She had hit him over the head. Cade could only stare at her, speechless. She impressed the hell out of him. "I knew I liked you," he finally said. "That was dangerous, but brave." Callie's brow knitted. Bending, Cade picked up his weapon. "He's not dead. His chest is moving," Cade relayed, wondering if that's why she looked concerned. "We gotta go, though." She sighed. Cade took her hand, and they sprinted through the weeds. Cade saw some of his team as they ran. Not long after, many escaped vehicles appeared in the distance. Good thinking on their part to provide extra cars for other inmates who'd made a run for it. Escapees were diving into them. Cade led them to an SUV. Raffi had left the door open. They jumped into the back seat. One of the vehicles took off like a bat out of hell. Enforcers were still in pursuit, running in their direction. Winston, from the op, dove inside, and then Eric burned rubber. Their heads jerked backwards. Gunfire ignited from behind them, shattering the windshield. A woman next to Cade screamed. Callie ducked, whimpering. He held her close to him. More shots followed as they sped up. "Everyone stay down!" Eric ordered. He swerved around the corner so fast the momentum slung them together. Raffi was sitting in the passenger seat. His head slammed into the window. "Shit, Eric!" "Sorry, man, you want a knot on your head or your head blown off?" Eric replied. Raffi remained silent. After a few more turns, Eric asked, "Is anyone hit?" No one was, but Cade hated to think about if anyone had lost their lives. Callie looked through the busted rear windshield. The air rushing in made her shiver. Cade pulled her tighter into his embrace. She didn't seem to mind. Wanting to know how she was holding up, he asked, "Hey, you okay?" "I'm shaking. Relieved we made it." This was shit that happened in books. Callie had a right to be flustered. Every few minutes her head darted from side to side. Now that it seemed like everything would be okay, Cade decided to tease Callie. Distract her from her worries. "Relax, we're in the clear." "Easy for you to say. The way you fought that enforcer, you've had some sort of training." "Yeah, some. I've never been in a combat situation, though. He remembered how she admirably came to his rescue. He only hated that she put herself at risk for him. You didn't listen to me anyway. I'm glad that you weren't hurt. Callie shrugged. Looked like you needed a hand. Thank you for helping. You're welcome. You came back for me, remember? So now we're even. Rafi chuckled. That's a damn shame a woman had to help you, Cade. Bite me. Cade's lips curled upward, and Eric laughed. We're almost at our destination, Cade told her, eyeing the chick and dude that were in the truck with them. He had already spilled the beans to Callie. Better to not let anyone else know more than they had to. I'll fill you in and answer any questions you have once we arrive. Callie nodded, and then she leaned her head against his shoulder, and Cade was in hog heaven. Cade woke up in a cold sweat, remembering his dream. The dream was about the night he had met Callie, almost a year ago. That night had been a nightmare, but also one of the best of his life. Callie turned out to be the love of his life. Cade wouldn't go back in time and change meeting her. After that night, they became fast friends. Soon, an eternal love grew between them. Cade's only fear was when they turned 21, they'd be forced into an arranged marriage with someone else. There was no getting around the regime.
Cat. Catalina wasn't hanging out with her friends on a Friday night like normal teenagers. Not that she had many, anyway. Over the past year, with her little brother's condition, Cat didn't socialize much. He had been her focus. Corey had finished his treatment, and she could only pray that he was out of the woods. Since Corey was finally feeling better, Cat was spending time with him. Their madre was working and wouldn't be home until late. Cat let Corey choose the movies they would watch while she put the popcorn in the microwave. The heavenly smell of butter filled the air. With everything that occurred after World War III, at least they still had buttered popcorn. That smells good, sis, Corey told Cat with a wide smile as she sat next to him on the sofa. He reached his hand into the bowl. Grabbing a large handful, he stuffed it into his mouth. Closing his eyes, Corey hummed in delight. Tastes even better than it smells. Cat's lips spread across her face. It pleased her that he could enjoy popcorn and not worry about being sick afterward. Corey had lost so much weight. He was as thin as a beanpole. Cat ruffled her hand in his hair. You're going to eat us out of house and home. Corey chuckled, knowing that she was only teasing. They started the movie. Corey had chosen an action-adventure with a main plot about fast race cars. A good-looking blonde cop was undercover, trying to take another buff, attractive man down. Cat couldn't take her eyes off the screen, checking out both men. The storyline was intriguing. Of course, the undercover cop started getting in too deep. The buff hunk's sister had a lot to do with it. Corey wasn't drooling over the men like Cat. He was into the fast, neat-looking cars and races. This movie series had been among the most popular back in the day, and getting DVDs for them was like pulling teeth. They had lucked out, getting a deal on the entire series for Corey's 13th birthday. He had been beyond psyched when he opened them. There was no more movie streaming. The new regime only aired the news, their government-sponsored television show, and sports. Unfortunately, only the elite got the privilege of getting the sports channels. Being middle class, Cat didn't know of anyone who had access to the sports channels. So, the only option for other entertainment was buying old movies or TV shows. All movies were watched on DVD, since no new movies had been made in almost 2 decades. The huge engine that used to be called Hollywood no longer existed. The nation had been rebuilding. But since the world dictator took the reins 9 years ago, he hadn't allowed much social engagement. Hell, going to parties or clubs was illegal. Cat thought that his strict mandates were to keep the nations in check, prevent the world from spiraling again. This movie is so cool, Cat, Corey said animatedly. Did you see how fast that car just went? Yeah, the blue smoke from the muffler was a nice effect. She wasn't going to admit that she was liking the movie more for the 2 hot male leads. Do you think the cop will turn him in? Not sure. He's fallen in love with his sister, so that complicates things. The movie was definitely a thrill of a ride. After it was over, Corey asked if they could watch the second movie. Just one more, and then bedtime. Aw, I'm a teenager now, not a kid. A teenager doesn't mean you're an adult, Kat giggled. By the time the next movie ended, it would be almost 11 p.m. Madre would be home from her late evening shift by then, and probably complain that Kat had let him stay up too late. Corey might be 13, but his body wasn't as strong as other 13-year-olds. He was still getting his strength back from the ordeal he'd gone through. At the start of the second movie, Corey was on the edge of his seat. As the movie progressed, Corey slouched in his seat. Kat noticed that he looked paler than usual. You feeling okay, Pooh Bear? Kat's brow knitted. Corey's forehead wrinkled. I hate it when you call me that, Kat. Her lips curled upward but didn't reach her eyes. Kat knew Corey secretly didn't mind the nickname she'd been calling him since he was a toddler. Corey turned on the sofa, lying his head down. Just getting a little sleepy. Kat's stomach twirled in knots. You sure that's all? Yeah, Corey answered quickly. Kat decided to leave it alone, although a chill ran through her body. As the movie continued, Corey fidgeted, shifting from one position to another, like he couldn't get comfortable. By the time the movie was over, beads of sweat were on Corey's forehead. His face was scrunched up, and he'd grown paler. Corey, what's wrong? Kat's voice rose several octaves. Just tired. I think I'm going to hit the sack. Kat stood, with him lingering close by. The way his body swayed when he walked was making her stomach turn cartwheels. Taking his next step, Corey stumbled, catching himself before he fell. Kat rushed over to him. Tell me what's wrong now! Don't try to pretend that you're fine. Kat had seen him like this before, and her fear had taken the front seat. Corey glanced at her with unfocused eyes. I don't feel too well, Kat. His eyes rolled to the back of his head. Then he collapsed. Kat screamed, barely catching him before he hit the ground. Corey had passed out cold. Kat paced, waiting for the doctor to give them a report. Kat had called Madre after Corey passed out. They rushed him to the emergency room, and from there, the hospital he'd been treated at. They were running tests on him to see what had happened. Doom tumbled in Kat's stomach, fearing the worst. Please, God, let Corey be okay, Kat prayed. Her brother had already been through too much, and she thought he'd beaten the odds. It seemed like eons before Corey's oncologist came to give them an update. Madre and Kat hurried over to him. Dr. Bentley, please tell us how my son is doing, Madre pleaded. Corey is feeling better for now, Mrs. Diaz. So why did he pass out? I thought he was in the clear. Madre was desperate for answers. Dr. Bentley's brow furrowed. I hope that also. But unfortunately, Corey has had a relapse. What does that mean exactly? Kat knew what the doctor meant, but she wanted him to spell it out. Dr. Bentley cleared his throat. I'm sorry to inform you that Corey is no longer in remission. His cancer is back. Kat had been moping all week about the prognosis her little brother was given. The cancer had returned, and it was worse than before. The kind Corey had was aggressive. Dr. Bentley told them that his only hope was the chemo trial medications. Unfortunately, hell would have to freeze over before they could afford it. Insurance wouldn't cover trial meds, so Kat couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel. Without the trial medication that had been proven to cure Corey's type of cancer, the outcome was inevitable. Without them, the doctor had given Corey a year tops. Down in the dumps, one of Kat's close friends, Aurora, had convinced her to come over her house. If Kat stayed home, she would cry like she'd been doing all week. Aurora lived in the same neighborhood, and they'd been friends since middle school. Kat filled Aurora in on Corey's prognosis. With Aurora's persistence, she'd continue to pry, so Kat decided to tell her and get it over with. "I'm so sorry, Catalina." Kat knew Aurora was worried because she rarely called her by her full name. "Why won't the insurance cover the trial meds if they have great results?" Kat shrugged. "Insurance will do anything to get out of paying for whatever they can. There must be something else you can do." "It's hopeless, Aurora, unless you have any idea of how I can come up with thousands upon thousands of dollars. Somehow, I don't think standing on the street corner in a pretty dress will cut it." Kat was being funny. It was either vent sarcastically or scream. "I couldn't see you being a prostitute, Kat. Not to mention that's a felony with hard time." Aurora chose to play along, concerned that Kat was close to breaking down. Aurora scratched her temple in thought. What? The word trials made me think of something that I read. Hold on a moment. Aurora told Kat, logging onto her computer. After a moment she said, "Yeah, I remembered correctly." "Are you gonna put me out of my misery?" Kat blew out her breath. "You should enter the temptation trials." "As in, the government-sponsored reality show?" "The one and only." "Why on earth would I do that? I'm not dating anyone. I need to prove to the world that our love can defeat the ultimate temptation." The new regime's most vital law was arranged marriages at the age of 21. Every citizen worldwide had to fill out a marriage application at the courthouse close to their 21st birthday. The government matched you with your partner for life. More than likely, it will be someone that you have never met before. The kicker was that divorce was not allowed. Ever. So, regarding the person the regime chose, you were stuck with them until death do you part. Kat, nor anyone else she knew, understood the regime's ridiculous notions to control love. What does doing so prove? Kat pondered. There was no way around it. No exceptions. Just a fact of life that everyone had no choice but to accept. It's the reason Kat and her high school sweetheart broke it off after they graduated. Why continue dating? They would both be married off when they turned 21. And Kat was certain that it wouldn't be to each other. Better to cut the ties than make it worse in the long run. The regime never let couples marry who were together beforehand. Any couple's only hope was to enter as a contestant on their government-sponsored reality show. If you were chosen, then the couple must prove to the world that their love was real. Unfortunately, it never worked in the couple's favor. The show was rigged for failure. The government had proved time and time again that the human flesh was too weak. Temptation won every time, proving the regime knew best who your soulmate should be. Aurora saw the confusion in Kat's face and clarified. Not as a candidate fighting for love, but as a temptress. Kat felt herself frowning. Mind explaining why I'd want to enter to be a temptress? Seems like that's only asking for trouble. There's enough going on in my life than to cause problems for other people. Because being a temptress could be the answer to your prayers. Kat's ears were burning to know how being a homewrecker was the answer. Please enlighten me? It says here that if you get accepted as a temptress, then you get a lump sum of money for participating. Kat's eyebrows rose, going over to the computer to read the details for herself. Her heart expanded after reading it. This was a fine example of never say never, because Kat never imagined that she would be considering entering that crazy reality show. She didn't have any other options. Like the oncologist had told them, Corey's fate was inevitable. It wasn't the question of if her brother would die without the trial meds. It was when. If it's within my power to give Corey a fighting chance, then shouldn't I do whatever needs to be done? Wondered Kat. There was nothing to debate over. It didn't matter what the public thought about her being a temptress. If Kat could save her brother's life, then she would. Damn the consequences. A knock on the door startled Kat from her reverie. Glancing out the peephole, she saw a postman, and her heart skipped a beat. If they were getting a personal delivery, it could only mean one thing. Your acceptance to the Temptation Trials came by personal mail, that the contestant had to sign. If you were accepted, then you would receive detailed information afterwards. Hesitantly, she opened the door. "Hello, I'm looking for Miss Catalina Laya Diaz," the postman greeted. "I'm her," Kat answered no louder than a whisper. "Oh, good. I won't have to come back," he said with a tight-lipped grin. "I have this for you. Just sign here." He showed Kat where to sign. After she did, he handed her the envelope, then bid her goodbye. The fancy writing on the envelope read, "The Temptation Trials." There was no return address. Kat stood in the doorway, unable to move. Gathering her courage, she finally closed the door. This document would reveal Corey's fate, whether he would get another chance at life. The thought of the answer being between two words, accepted or denied, was becoming too much. Kat could hear her heart beating so loudly, she thought it would pop out of her chest. Unable to take the anxiety anymore, she ripped the envelope open, unfolding it. Her eyes scanned over the document frantically. "Dear Miss Catalina Laya Diaz, the regime is happy to inform you that you've been accepted as a temptress for the Temptation Trials Season 6, Fall of 2036. Congratulations! You will receive an email within the next couple of days with further instructions." Kat read the message twice in disbelief. When the reality kicked in that there was now a light at the end of the tunnel, she squealed. Her madre rushed into the living room. "Kat, is everything all right?" Her madre got wind of the envelope in Kat's hand. "Is that letter from Temptation?" Slowly, Kat nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "Yes, madre. I got accepted." Madre gasped, hurrying over to Kat to see the letter for herself. After she read it, she embraced Kat tightly. "Thank you so much for doing this, mija. This is the answer that we've been hoping for. All I have to do is see it through, and no matter the outcome, Corey will get a fighting chance." Hope bubbled inside her. Kat didn't want to get too far ahead of herself, but entering Temptation Trials could be Corey's salvation. Part 1. Autocracy. Chapter 1. A white picket fence with 3 kids, a loving husband, and a dog. That's not quite how I envisioned my life. I've dreaded when I'd come of age to be arranged to be married by law, and I never thought I'd be a temptress on a government-sponsored TV show. Catalina's head was still reeling about the next step she'd have to take. Being on the show was her brother's only chance, but he'd just encountered a relapse, and she really didn't want to leave him. Kat plastered on a bright smile as she entered her little brother's bedroom. Corey looked so different from the vibrant boy she'd known a year ago. He'd lost weight. His cheeks were sunken. He lay in bed, his complexion pale. When he saw his favorite sister, as he always called her, his only sister, Kat would laugh. His eyes lit up. That made her feel better. "Hey, Kat, how's my favorite sis?" "I'm your only sister. How are you doing?" "Better, now that you're here." Going over to his bed, she ruffled his hair. "You're so sweet, Pooh Bear, but I came to say goodbye." She'd called him that since he was a baby, and it had stuck. His face crumbled. "Where are you going?" "Remember I told you that I was going to be a contestant on Temptation Trials?" His face brightened again. "Yeah, I remember now. That's cool." "Not really," Kat thought. "You'll get to be on TV. When will it air? All my friends will be jealous that my sister will be on television." Kat bit her lip. "It's an adult show, Pooh Bear. You have to be 18 and up to watch." Corey poked out his lips. "Well, why do you have to go? Is it so you'll have a shot at choosing who your husband will be?" Kat raised her eyebrows. This youngster did have insight on the show. That perspective was more in favor of the chosen couples. Well, it depended on if they still wanted to be together after the trials were over. Thus far, no couple had yet to survive temptation. Corey did know about the new regime's absurd law of arranged marriage at the age of 21. There was no way around it. That's not quite how it works. Kat wasn't about to tell him that she'd been chosen as a temptress to tempt the chosen male candidates, whom some considered homewreckers. Chapter 2. Kat barely made her flight to San Diego. The 18 couples had sailed to the Hawaiian Islands a few days prior. The male and female tempters met up in San Diego. From there, they all flew on a charter flight to the 3 different islands, Maui, Oahu, and Kauai. She had been assigned to the island Oahu. A van drove her and the other 10 temptresses from the airport to the resort. Despite Kat's nerves, Oahu was the most beautiful place she'd ever seen. The aqua water was the prettiest blue. She couldn't wait to take a swim, especially with the dolphins, number 1 on her list. The landscape bloomed with vibrant flowers and plants. As they continued, an eerie blue mist began to infiltrate the area. It was an unexplained phenomenon that had been occurring for months, appearing throughout the entire globe. One strange thing about the mist was that its form was translucent. It also didn't hinder your vision. Then there was the odd color blue. Kat was no meteorologist, but a fog was normally a grayish color, definitely not transparent. Another strange factor was that it would appear at any hour of the day, not only in the morning. As time passed, it began to occur more often and stayed for longer periods. The media reported that the mysterious mist might be due to changes in the ozone layer. Meteorologists reassured the public that the fog was not related to earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, or any other natural disaster. After a while, society seemed to accept their theories, going on with life. Most of the nation admired it as a beautiful phenomenon, snapping pictures and thinking it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Kat was still on the fence about it. The mist was the most gorgeous blue, but every time it appeared, she felt the hair stand up on the back of her neck. A few women in the van remarked about it. Some of them seemed leery like her. Others were gushing over it. The resort loomed in the distance. Kat was just about to text her family to let them know that she'd arrived when she remembered that she didn't have her cell phone. Everyone had to turn in all their electronic devices once they'd landed in Oahu. There was no communication allowed during the trials. The temptresses would get their devices back in 3 weeks if they were not chosen as one of the final 6 contestants, or in 6 weeks if they were. Kat felt naked without her cell, not being able to communicate with anyone. There was no choice in the matter, and it would take a while to get used to. "I don't see what's so great about the blue fog," the temptress sitting next to Kat expressed. "It's pretty and all, but for whatever reason, it gives me the creeps." "I feel the same way," Kat agreed. "Do you find it strange that we can see through it clearly?" "That's only one of the many weird things about it." "I'm Catalina. Nice to meet you." "Sahara. Good to meet you too." Sahara sighed, peering out the window, appearing lost in her thoughts. They pulled into the long, circular driveway in front of the resort, a tall, luscious oasis. Kat was the last temptress to get off the van. The group followed the enforcers into the resort. The bellhops began to gather the women's luggage, walking them to the elevators. 2 male bellhops headed in Kat's direction. She thought they would grab her luggage like the others had, but they waltzed right past her. Placing a hand on her hip, Kat said, "Excuse me?" Halting in their steps, they turned toward her. One man replied, "How may I help you?" "Can you help me with my luggage to my suite?" "Sure thing," the same guy replied, "as soon as our break is over." She scrunched her nose. "Okay, that's fine, but do you know how long that will be?" She could understand they needed a break, but Kat was tired from 2 flights and just wanted to get settled in. The man who'd spoken shrugged. The other said, Not too long. A few minutes. One of the attendants should be down shortly from helping contestants. If they're not back before we are, we'll take your luggage then. With that, they went outside without a backward glance. Alrighty, guess I have no choice but to wait. Those two don't strive for excellence in customer service, thought Kat, shaking her head. Kat twiddled her thumbs, taking in the luxurious hotel. The decor featured a beach theme. The sofas, chairs, coffee tables, and other pieces looked expensive. Enforcement lurked about. It was bizarre they all wore sunglasses inside. It must be part of their Trials uniform. The enforcer in charge, Gonad, was touching the brim of his shades. A light emanated from them. He stood as still as a statue while he fiddled with the shades. Every so often, Enforcer Gonad would touch the rim or swipe his finger across thin air. At first, Kat was stumped until she realized that he must be looking at something only he could see. Enforcement was close by, guarding the area. Staff members were at the desk, going about their daily routines. During the 6 weeks the show aired, the Temptresses and 6 chosen male candidates would be the only guests at the hotel. As a popular tourist site, at least there would be plenty to do, from surfing to snorkeling, and the list went on. The regime was sponsoring the dates. Another perk was that all food in the downstairs restaurants was free. They only had to pay for essentials like hygienic products, sporting goods, or if they wanted to use one of the spa retreats. Kat took a seat on the plush sofa in the large lounge area, which had an enormous flat screen that looked over 100 inches wide. After waiting for 20 minutes, her nostrils flared. The 2 bellhops had yet to return, and none of the others had either. Screw this! I'll just take my luggage myself, Kat thought, huffing. Irked that the staff had helped every temptress but her, she misjudged the steps to the elevator and tripped. Barely catching herself from face-planting, Kat continued to struggle with her large 2 suitcases. She jumped, hearing a male's voice. You got a load there. Need a hand? Scrunching her nose, she whipped her head in his direction. A bellhop must have finally decided to help. She wasn't in the mood for him to crack jokes. When Kat spotted the guy who had addressed her, she lost her frown quickly. She tried not to ogle him, which proved difficult. His alluring gray eyes reminded her of platinum. They were so light that she felt he could see straight through her. She knew the men had already arrived. She'd just expected to meet him at the intro party this evening, not bump into any of them blindly. Gathering herself, Kat replied, Oh, hi. I thought you were a bellhop trying to be funny. What do you mean? His forehead wrinkled. Come to think of it, why aren't they helping you? 2 of them are outside on a smoke break. They told me they'd be with me in a minute. That was 20 minutes ago. Kat shrugged. I got tired of waiting. I want to get settled. I almost missed my flight to get to San Diego. She blew out her breath. More so, I'm just ready to get these 6 weeks over and done with. He smirked. You just got here and you're ready to leave? Giving him a shy grin, she figured she sounded like a nutjob. Well, the sooner it's over, the sooner I can go home. He raised his eyebrow. She continued pulling her luggage. Let me help you, he offered, reaching for her 2 suitcases. She smiled warmly. I'd appreciate that. He looked her over from head to toe. Is he checking me out? Pondered Kat, unable to contain her smile. Kat's heart raced. It shouldn't please her. She was only here for one reason. As he was offering to help her, she should at least introduce herself. Extending her hand, she said, I'm Catalina, by the way. I take it you're here for temptation. Yeah, you as well? She nodded. Nice to meet you. I'm Kincaid. He shook her hand. The contact sent an electric shock of pleasure through her body, and he jerked his hand away, shifting his weight. Did my touch repulse him? Kat wondered, biting her lip. Kincaid grabbed her suitcases, and Kat tugged alongside him to the elevators. When the doors pinged open, they walked inside. What floor are you on? He asked. 3rd floor, please. A current of energy sizzled through the air. He raked a hand through his dark walnut-brown hair. Everything okay? Yeah, I'm good. Just ready for the trials to be over, too. Kat sighed. I completely understand. My fingers are crossed there won't be all the drama of the previous seasons. I just need the money. His mouth fell open. That came out sounding funny, but Kat didn't know she had it in her to explain further. Chapter 3. Sahara's mind drifted back to that night. The night that still haunted her. She cringed as the memories overtook her. Sahara peered around, a bit on edge as she waited for Calvin in the hotel lounge. He was visiting in their hometown of Atlanta, Georgia, for business. They were going to have dinner in the downstairs restaurant. She'd gotten all spruced up, wearing a trendy maroon cocktail dress, wanting to look her best for him. They had been high school sweethearts, and even now she couldn't shake her feelings for Calvin. Deep down, Sahara knew longing for him would only make things worse. Texting and talking over the phone had seemed harmless enough, but then he'd started asking to meet up in person. This would be their third time seeing each other, and she sensed continuing to do so would lead down a dangerous path. Last time they'd only hugged goodbye, but she craved more. Sahara had seen the lust in his eyes also. Her heart pounded inside her chest. She damn near jumped out of her skin when a familiar, sexy male's voice greeted her. When Sahara turned, laying eyes on Calvin, she exhaled. He still made butterflies swirl in her stomach, but that shouldn't be the case. Technically, he wasn't hers anymore. "How are you?" Calvin asked. "I'm good." "You look amazing, as always." Sahara took in his tall, muscular frame. He'd always had the smoothest, toffee-colored skin, with very handsome facial features, a great smile, and dreamy brown eyes. "You look great as well." "I hope you haven't been waiting for too long." "Nah, I haven't been here long." "Shall we?" He extended his arm. Sahara took it, and they strolled over to the restaurant in the hotel. They ordered, and it didn't take long for the waiter to bring their drinks and appetizers. They made idle chit-chat while they dug in. Calvin reached for her hand across the table. "I'm happy you agreed to meet me for dinner. You've been a little distant lately, so I wasn't sure you would." Sahara sighed. "It's just hard for me, Calvin. I can never truly be with you, and only having a piece of you is torture." "Sahara, You know I want to be with you too. This isn't my choice, it's the law." "The bottom line is that you're married now. If someone finds out and reports us, we'll be penalized." Calvin was a lot of Sahara's firsts. Her first love, the first and only man she'd ever been intimate with. He was almost a year older than her. He'd been married off recently. Since then, it had been grueling. At first, Sahara wasn't sure how she'd survive. They'd been in a relationship up until Calvin had gotten details about his future wife from the courthouse, the woman he was married to now. Time was a ticking bomb for Sahara. She would be turning 21 soon, and then the government would choose her husband. This was a no-win situation that was bound to explode in their faces. Why does the regime have to enforce this ridiculous law? I guess the government wants to show they have absolute power. They're doing a fine job to be able to control who you loved, Sahara thought, sighing. The waiter chose that moment to interrupt. They both jumped. The server placed their food down. Sensing the tension in the air, he asked them if they needed anything, and then left quickly. Having lost her appetite, Sahara picked at her food. Calvin blew out his breath. "It's always been you, Sahara. If I wasn't forced into marriage, then I would have married you." Her breath caught. She wanted that more than anything. The reality was that it would never happen. Divorce was not allowed. Calvin continued. "I know this isn't how you pictured our life, but if this is the only way that I can see you, spend time with you, then I'll take it. I don't want to lose you, Sahara." "I want to be able to see you also. This just seems impossible." "Life is what you make of it. We may have to follow the rules, but the government can't truly control our hearts." "True, but they sure can make a mess of them." They finished their meal, neither one saying much. "Come with me to the hotel's courtyard. It has a garden and waterfall. I think you'll like it." Sahara followed him to the atrium. There were a few guards roaming about. Sahara whipped her head from side to side, paranoid someone would notice them, report them. Once they arrived, her shoulders relaxed. The area was full of wonderful-smelling flowers. A huge water fountain stood out as a beautiful work of art. It was funny that the statue they'd chosen was Cupid, shooting water from his arrow. The glass ceiling was vaulted, and tonight you could see the stars. They were the only two here, making the moment more intimate. Calvin turned toward her. "Sahara, I still love you." "I love you too, Calvin, but it doesn't change our circumstances." "Let me show you how much you mean to me, sweetheart. Spend the night with me." Seeing each other was dangerous enough. The fact remained that he was married, and soon she would be too. Being sexually intimate was a line she knew that once crossed, that was it. Staring into Calvin's eyes caused her to waver, seriously considering spending the night with him. Leaning down, he kissed her forehead. He continued lower, aiming for her lips. Caught up in his love spell, Sahara was seconds from giving in and saying, "Fuck it." She wanted to live in the moment, consequences be damned. But the thought of who else Calvin had been kissing crossed her mind. Right before his lips made contact, Sahara pulled back. "Do you love your wife?" She needed to know the truth. Somehow it mattered. Maybe because that was what the reality was. "I do care about her. I won't lie and say that I don't, but I'm not in love with her. I haven't known her long enough, and how can I truly be in love with her when I still feel this way about you?" There was one more question that Sahara had to know, something that she never dared ask before. "You've had sex with her, though, I'm sure." Calvin looked away, and that was all the confirmation she needed. She couldn't go through with this knowing that as soon as he returned home, his lips would be on her. He'd be inside her, too. Sahara wasn't about to be his mistress, especially when her heart was on the line. She stepped back. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this." Calvin's face crumpled. "I want you so badly, but it doesn't have to be tonight." Sahara shook her head. "No, I can't do this, period." His brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I don't think we should see each other anymore, or talk over the phone." He lifted her chin, forcing her to look at him. "Please don't do this. Just because I care about her doesn't mean I love you any less." His brown eyes seared her to the point that her heart really felt in pain. This was why she couldn't go through with this. "But you'd be okay with sleeping with us both?" Calvin flinched. "It's not like that. You're the person that I would choose if I had a choice in the matter." Though that might be true, it still didn't change a damn thing. No matter how he tried to spin it, if she slept with him, it would be an affair. Sahara would be the other woman. Her heart couldn't take it. She had to end it now before it was too late. She backed further away. "I will always care about you, Calvin. I just can't do this. I'm sorry. Please don't call me anymore." Turning on her heels, she almost ran from the hotel. She heard him calling her, begging her not to leave, but she didn't turn back. Sahara shook her head, attempting to rid herself of the dreadful memory. Involving herself with Calvin had been a mistake that had cost her a lot, leading up to the situation she was in now, being a temptress for Season 6 of the Temptation Trials. This was a step she needed to take in order to have a clean slate. This was her one chance to make things right in her life again, even though she wasn't thrilled about being a contestant on the show. The world was still recuperating from war. Different news stations and government-sponsored reality shows were the only things aired on television. That was it, besides the minimal sports channels, which only the upper class had privileges to. That was the reason Temptation Trials was a hit show. The entire nation watched it. all of Sahara's dirty laundry would be aired. She hadn't applied for the show to cause havoc in the chosen couple's lives, but she figured she might be chosen to go on a date. Sahara could go with the flow of harmless dating, and when it was over, her record would be clean, mingle with a few men, then she could return to her life in Atlanta and start over. No harm, no foul. With her head set straight on her shoulders, she took a deep breath and entered the Temptation intro party, where she would meet the 6 chosen candidates of Season 6.